Yo, what's up? What's up? We live. It's Seed Talk, stuff to make your seeds walk. We got my man here. It's long overdue, man, and I really appreciate you taking time on this holiday, 4th of July. Got my man Yirim Seck here, and it's been long overdue. I'm gonna let him introduce himself, but also want to recognize and acknowledge everyone who are celebrating this holiday of Independence Day, the 4th of July. I celebrate it and recognize it in a different way. As you see my shirt, I like to recognize all of the colonized Black and Copper, Indigenous, Aboriginal people all over the world who have gained independence from colonial forces. 1804 Haiti, 1896 Ethiopia, 1957 in Ghana, 1962 for Jamaica. There's so many, you know what I'm saying? So I just want to give, props to those nations who had enough courage and give a moment of silence for them real quick. All right, bet. So I just wanted to I got a very special guest. I'm really excited for the banter that we're gonna have today on Seed Talk. Because we're gonna talk about the state of hip hop. We're gonna talk about who gets credit for, creating hip hop. Is it the African diaspora? Is it Black Americans? Because we got people like Tariq Nasheed, or we're talking about Tone Talks or Yvette Carnell, who are with the Foundational Black Americans or African descendants of slavery. They like to really concentrate on Black people from America that have not immigrated here, not a part of the diaspora. They're not really into, the whole Pan-African movement. They're really into like Black Americans created hip hop and not giving any credit to the diaspora. So we're gonna talk about that and just talk about a little bit about the state of hip hop, because people saying this hip hop is whack now, and we all got our opinions, but Yirim and I are about to get into it. So Yirim, why don't you tell them, what I'm saying, where you from, what you do, and all that, blah blah blah.
Yeah, hold on one second. Let me close this door real quick. So there ain't no background noise in here, yeah. My apologies. Yeah, so my name is Yirim Seck. I'm a first generation Senegalese American, born and raised in the historic Seattle Central District. I'm an artist and a musician, community activist, for lack of a very better word, I guess. Been doing hip hop for about 22 years now. I own and operate my own construction company as a general contractor. I'm a teaching artist. Um, I do a lot of things. Um, yeah. I mean, is there any specifics y'all want to know?
Yeah, man. I want to let people know where they can find your music so they can check out your music and whatnot. And you got some good music, man.
Man, thank you. That means a lot. So I'm on all streaming platforms under Yirim Seck. That's YIRIMSECK. There's only one Yirim Seck. I should be pretty easy to find. That's SoundCloud, Bandcamp, Apple Music, Tidal, Spotify. I'm everywhere.
That's what's up. Why don't you just tell us a little bit, about the Central District, growing up in the Central District, and what it means to you as an artist, as an activist, and just as as a a Senegalese American. Tell them a little bit about it, and also talk a little bit about your background, your ancestry, and your parents and whatnot.
So where do I start? I've been in the Central my whole life, literally. I've still reside in this Central. I've moved a total of 4 times, and it's never been further than, I say, like 6, 7 blocks from my original birth home. So I've seen the change in real time. A lot of my music is reflective of that too, in terms of um, the history of the Central District and the change We're constantly having this conversation of gentrification, displacement, um, which was urban renewal at one time, which was weed and seed at one time, but it's all the same thing. So a lot of my music is reflective on that. But there's also a cultural aspect to it. I'm Senegalese American. My father's side is Senegalese. My mother's side is American. My mother's from Arkansas. Um, and it's weird because I have a Christian side of the family and I have a Muslim side of the family. How that happened, I couldn't tell you, but it worked out. Um, so my father being Senegalese, he is part of the Rio tribe, which is funny because you got the the you do the little storytelling that has to do with like the griots. And for those of y'all who don't know about the griots, in Senegal, the language is Wolof, and there's no like literal translation for certain things. And what people don't know about the griots is that a lot of the history was passed down through storytelling. So they're like the keepers of, history, and they pass it down um, through the oratory. So it just kind of runs in my blood. I guess I got into music at an early age. I like words. I like telling stories. I also understand that as a first generation Senegalese American, that my story is not exclusively mine. So, and when I say that, I don't mean you got to be Senegalese to relate to my story. This There's an intersect between you being a Japanese American, an Ethiopian American, a Senegalese American, whatever it is. Um, just you know, trying to maintain your culture and fit in with the American culture was always a delicate tightrope for me. Because growing up, I was largely ashamed of being African because they teased me for having an African name that they couldn't pronounce, um, having the big lip, broad nose, nappy hair, being called all kind of names. So I dealt with a lot of insecurity when it came to embracing my Senegalese heritage, and I found power in the music.
Mm.
And when I started telling my story, I realized that it wasn't just mine. So that gave me even more power to dig deeper and reconnect with my culture, heritage, lineage, and really figure out who I was as an African. And now I'm Senegalese, 100.
Yeah.
Um, and that's just that.
Yeah, that's dope, man. That's dope, man. I appreciate that. And it's really interesting just growing up in the black community. It seems like our peers, and as we get older, we call them colleagues. They, you know, in the black community, they always have some kind of reason to utilize and apply those I call them plantation politics.
Hmm.
And what it is like always trying to figure out a way how to other someone. Like, what
Right.
was your name? It was where you're from, where your father was from, because he was from Africa. And I remember it was a term back in the day they used to call, a person with strong African features an African booty scratcher.
Scratcher. Ah, bro, I always say that.
Yeah.
It was
And
tar
it's
baby.
Yeah,
It was
exactly. So they always had a way to other us, and we learned that from the colonizer. And it's really interesting that we're having this conversation, or I wouldn't say interesting. It's very serendipitous, I should say, and just right on point and accurate that we be having this conversation on the 4th of July or the 4th of July when they're celebrating their independence. We were still enslaved. And these are the things that keep us enslaved. When we're talking about the independence of America, then we need to start really talking about how we keep ourselves non-independent and dependent on America. And a lot of that talk that we do to talk about the skin color of each other and whatnot is the way we do it. And me growing up, it was definitely conversations and comments and a lot of critiquing of my nose. I had to grow into my nose and
hmm
I really appreciate my nose because I have like a traditional African, I call it an African indigenous nose. It has features of, a stereotypical Native American nose, but also the wide nostrils of, African ancestry. And I just remember being embarrassed by my nose,
Mm-hmm.
my thick eyebrows, and my nappy hair too, man.
Right.
It wasn't the good hair. And then as I got older, it was just like trying to embrace my Native American culture, what I'm saying? Coming, my grandmother said we were, Blackfoot, but I just think that she was saying that because our feet are black.
Hey, but that's the go-to for black people though. It's like
Exactly.
I'm Blackfoot.
But as I got older, I was like, maybe it might have been more like maybe Choctaw or
Right, right.
whatnot. So it's really interesting once you start doing these deep dives and go down those rabbit holes into your culture. You, like you said, there is a lot of intersection that, Africans that were brought here in America, Africans that stayed on the continent, that they have. You know what I'm saying? Whether it's the regalia that they wear, it's the culture, it's the custom
Mm-hmm.
that they have. Like, we share a lot of those things. You mentioned that your mom is from Arkansas, and one of my partners, he enlightened me on something, that his ancestry is actually from Arkansas, and he educated me on 1919, September 30th, which was the Elaine massacre, where
Mm.
200 plus black men and women and children were murdered in a protest, and that led to his family migrating up to Detroit. And
Mm.
so it's like, I'm sure your father can talk it about, his relationship, with the colonizer in Africa. My point is no matter where we go, we have these, I'm saying, relationships with the colonizers, and there's a culture that comes out of it, that is coupled, I'm saying, with the trauma. And you
Right.
talked about the griot, and I'm like, the griot is the rapper. We're gonna get into
Let's
that and all that,
let's be real. There's
um,
something before we get into that though. There's an
yeah, yeah.
important piece that I always tell people. Like my mom got a lot of slack. She came up in she was a Pan Africanist. So she grew up in the era of the 60s where everybody was trying to reconnect with their African heritage. They was changing their names, they was dressing the part, they were really trying to find where they came from. And so she got a lot of slack, was even called pretentious and fake because she chose to be an African versus being an American. And she always told folks, man, like we all from Africa. If you don't know where you from, you need to point to the map and pick a place. That's what she always told us. But that forced you to ask the question of like where I'm really from and doing a deep dive in exploring like the history of you and your people. And I don't think a lot of people like understand that a lot of our parents came out of that. The whole daishikis, the the name changing to Ades, Afuas, and
The bays,
Karimus.
the bays,
Like
the L's, yeah.
right,
The X's,
right.
the Muhammad's, yeah.
Right. I get it. I didn't understand it back then, but I get it now. And there's another part of that is that what I do appreciate about this younger generation is that they're more open to dating um, people who are not American or identify as an American. Like when I was coming up, it was terrible to be African. They didn't want nothing to do with you. You wasn't getting hollered at by the girls. You was being made fun of.
But
It
that's
was
if you.
not
I
cool.
think that's if you were a dude, though.
If,
Because
yeah, the women was fine. The
yeah, yeah,
dudes,
yeah.
right? So you can
But you know
imagine.
what? But
You
you
can
know what?
imagine uh, how my self esteem and confidence was chipped away at before I could even you know build one. I didn't have the confidence. I didn't have the mentorship. I didn't have the self esteem. Um, my power really came in discovering hip hop and using that as an outlet to kind of tell my story. But these new kids, they with it, man. They
Yeah,
love the Ethiopians. They love the Senegalese. They love everything African, and I'm here for it.
okay, that's and I work in the schools, and so it's good to know that they're doing that. I work in Tacoma, and when I worked in Seattle, I think it was a little bit more prevalent in Seattle. I don't really see it that much in Tacoma.
Mhm.
Seattle's more of an international city than Tacoma. No knock on Tacoma because I love
Right.
Tacoma, but it's a more of a town. Se- Seattle has really mutated and evolved into
Mhm.
a very international city. It's always been an international, but it's really, like you said, it really embraces East Africans and things of that nature. And when I was in school, man, in perfect colonizer, what I'm saying, imitation fashion, we accepted the women because we wanted to what's the word I'm looking for? We wanted to court them
Right.
more or be romantic with them or sexually conquest them more than anything. So the women were definitely accepted more than the men, even if it was only for that reason. And I remember I
Hmm.
was trying to get with a few Ethiopian sisters, and I ended up getting with an Eritrean sister when I was like maybe a senior in high school. And I just remember the commentary that she said about how her parents felt about Black Americans, though.
Mm.
And she was just like, they would rather me date a white guy than date you. You know what I'm
Woo.
saying? And I was like, damn. And she was like, yeah, man, we got about 2 or 3 hours, and you cannot be here. They cannot do this.
You gotta go.
Gotta go. And
You was out the window like Friday, huh?
yeah, man, she was a cool sister though, man. But I saw her as a sister. I saw her just as just another version of blackness. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? You mentioned something called Pan Africanism. Can you explain to the public like what is Pan Africanism, and we want to talk about like how that shares a lot of intersection with hip hop because you said you made a comment. I think what you were trying to say, what I heard you saying is people talk stuff about you, for having strong African features in your name and stuff like that, but you really found your confidence and your self-esteem through music. I feel like you were trying to say you found it through music and hip hop.
I did. Yeah,
Okay.
man. That was, to answer your question about the Pan Africanism, though, is to put it very simply. I think that was a movement of people just really trying to reconnect with their ancestry and better educate themselves. I think Pan African is broad. Like I think there's a lot to unpack there. Um, my mother listened to a lot of John Henry Clark. Um, who was it? Ivan Van Sertima. Um, like really understanding that their contributions to modern civilization went far beyond the history of slavery and our contributions to American civilization. Um, so Pan Africanism is, I grew up just with my mother constantly trying to, educate us about the accomplishments of Africans and what they brought and contributed here to American society.
Yeah. I've met your mom several times, and um, it she has a demeanor and a posture and an energy,
It's
and
scary, bro. It's scary. Just
thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
don't even. You ain't gotta beat around the bush on here.
I
So I
was
know,
gonna, I
yeah,
was gonna
you
use a
know my
different
mom,
word,
so
but
we ain't
listen,
gotta. Yeah,
it's beautiful though. I was gonna use the word intimidating.
that too. Yeah,
She's about that. Like
real talk.
she walks straight up, her posture, how she sits. I mean, you gotta come correct,
Right,
around her because I was an educator in Seattle,
mhm,
and so so some of your siblings were, my students at
right,
Garfield and
right.
whatnot. And so I got to know your mom and everything. But I don't think a lot of people who are watching this throughout the country really understanding this, and this is a part of what we do on Sea Talk. And I'm glad that you can speak to this more than I can because you've been a resident there. People don't understand how black Seattle is, man. They really be sloughing on the blackness that came out of Seattle. Like we had the second largest chapter of the Black Panther Party. We had Jimi Hendrix come out of here. Garfield High School had Quincy Jones. We're claiming Quincy. You know, he can have dual citizenship. Chicago can claim him too. But I mean, Ray Charles ran these streets with his blind self. You know what I'm saying? But what people don't understand is that your mom grew up in an area of the country that was so strong with the Pan-Africanism. Like it was like almost being in a different planet, man.
Really,
and
that's
when I
real
yeah,
tough.
and when I met her, it was just like, damn, I was just like, this is a powerful woman. And what you guys are, and that's a whole different episode, but what your family is doing to hold on to the real estate and create a cultural, you know what I'm saying, landmark to say that we're still there in the Central District is really powerful. So I commend you for doing that.
The thing about it is, this Pan Africanism was about connecting the diaspora too. So I guess it's no coincidence that my mother married a Senegalese, because that was the whole purpose. Like they was really trying to. I guess my mom was like, "Y'all gonna be African. My kid's gonna be African. We just not gonna be American."
So it was intentional.
I think it was intentional. I don't think she said that because she married. We don't all have the same father, but she married 3 African men, and all of us turned out beautiful, man. And she made it so that we could never be ashamed of being African, because the hardest part about growing up with my mother, believe it or not, was not the intimidation. It was not me having to kind of explain why the way she is. Believe it or not, though, the hardest part about growing up with my mother is that she fully became an African in ways that a lot of people didn't during the Pan-Africanism, during that whole era. Like you had people who would wear the medallions and wear the
She was wearing the
dashiki.
headdress and
God,
everything.
she was full on. She was, and when I say full on, I always tell people, I grew up with a mother who knew more about African history than some Africans.
Oh yeah.
She was more African than some Africans. I knew some Africans who were more American than American. But she decided that she was gonna fully embrace this, from the head wrap to the jewelry. And if you know my mother, she's a phenomenal jeweler. Like she makes these beautiful pieces, and they're not just ornamental. She traveled all around the world to collect one of a kind beads that were worth hundreds, sometimes in the thousands, to make these pieces. But she took it a bit further and learned the history behind them. So there's a story behind everything: the mud cloths, the kentes, the head wraps. Bro, she was killing cats out here. Oh, you think you know, but you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
She would go to these lectures and rip them apart, bro, and ask some of the toughest questions. I mean, she was just an intellectual. And part of that was due to her history, because, and not to go too deep into it, but she grew up became ill in her teens and was in a full body cast because she had tuberculosis. So she was bedridden for about a year, if not longer. That's when she went into a deep dive and started really educating herself, growing up in the deep South and dealing with segregation and racism and all that. Prior to my grandfather moving the family up here, she tells me the story of how she went into the library, and I want to say she found a book on George Washington Carver, and that was the first time that she realized that Black people wrote books. Before that, she had never been introduced to any Black literature. So at that point, she became addicted and just took this deep dive.
What's up with your mom now? I mean, what's the history on your mom?
Oh man, she's alive and well, bro. She's reclusive. I don't know who's watching this, but she don't fuck with nobody. Dog, she ain't with all that, bro. You want to be around her. It got to be for a purpose. Like she's largely disappointed in what this city's becoming. She don't come out, bro.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's something to be said about when you grow older and all those people who were in the movement with you have died and passed on, and then this new generation doesn't speak the same language as the older generation, and is not really open to speaking the language that she speaks. I don't think she really has the ability to dumb it down. You gotta level up for her, man.
Yeah, man. Shout out to moms, man, to all earth, man. Being a just being a legend, a living ancestor amongst us, man, and just really a community treasure, man. So we appreciate the contributions she's made to our community and whatnot. I wanted to transition real quick, man. When you talk about Pan-Africanism, we can't talk about the Not Out of Africa movement.
Mm.
Are you familiar with this?
I've heard about it, but I ain't giving no attention.
I'm gonna give a little premise for it, and you can tell me what you think. It's the premise that we are not out of Africa, we are already here, and it seemed like they go out of their way to try to dismiss all the contributions of the diaspora and of Pan-Africanism and whatnot. And just basically say, well, we're not African. No, we're Native American, we're Aboriginal.
So, wait,
We're
is this the conversation about the foundational Africans versus what's that other group that's beefing? Like
the foundational Black Americans. That's Tariq Nasheed.
Right.
ADOS, American Descendants of Slavery, which is Yvette Carnell and Tone Talks. So
look, man, to answer your question about us being here, I partly agree with that. I believe we was everywhere prior to slavery. I also don't really believe history. Me and my lady have this conversation because we don't directly control the narrative anymore. And with everything going digital, they can just, they can change up shit in a minute. But I will say, for those folks who are claiming that we have been here, I think their motivations are a little bit different because those are the same ones who are fighting for reparations and is trying to get some money from America. So if they can successfully prove that we were here prior to slavery, it goes beyond reparations. It's now a land thing. We need our land back at that point. But then there becomes this conflict where they'll use these narratives, and now there's a beef between the natives. Sort of like every time there is an attack on the Asian community or the Jewish community, they immediately want to say it's anti something. And I'm not saying that doesn't exist, but some of these events are just random and one off. But it fits the narrative, so they run with it. But in this case, I think they're trying to prove that we've been here. Now it goes beyond reparations, and now we're entitled to the land that we actually sitting on. Whereas the natives is like, bro, we've been here, B. This is us. And I'm rocking with the natives. That's just me. Like,
yeah, I agree with you. I see it both ways. And I totally agree. I think you hit it dead on. I have these discussions with like my brother Doug Rand, who's a Moor.
yep.
He's a part of the Moor Science Temple, and they were like, he's really big on this stuff. Hey, Logic, man, stop calling yourself Black. And what he means by that is he's saying that in legal documents that are formulated by these Europeans, it doesn't say Black. And I get it. I get it. But it doesn't mean I'm not Black. I'm terra preta. That's the color of the soil that is out of Amazon. That is, that can fertilize itself. I am melanin. Melanin is Black. I am carbon. Carbon is Black. It's the foundation of all life. Where there is carbon, there is life. So I'm never going to deny my Blackness. Or, I can call myself copper. I understand why they want to call themselves you know what I'm saying, indigenous or aboriginal, because that or more, because that can be found in paperwork,
Mm-hmm.
which say can give us some kind of entitlement and justification towards land and money and reparations. I totally get that.
Right.
And you know more, you know about that more than me, because you guys are seizing up land over there in the Central District and making sure y'all are not forgotten. So I understand the importance of that. However, you can have it both ways.
Mm-hmm.
You can say poetically, historically, even going back to Egypt or Kemet. Stop saying that Kemet means land of the black, but they're not talking about the people. They're
Right.
talking
Right.
about soil. Stop doing that.
Right.
Just stop doing that. Even if they're talking about the soil, you're talking about a group of people who identify with the color of the soil, which is black, which is the land of black, which is the land of the people. We've always identified with the land.
Right.
That's the reason why it was such an atrocity and a travesty for the European to come and steal the land, because it's like stealing the people. No one owns the land. We are a part of the land.
Right.
So to say that the land of the black is only talking about the soil, but not talking about the people that are on the soil, come on, man, you double talking now.
That's real.
You know, so you don't have to go out of your way, ADOS. You don't have to go out of your way, FBA, or even my man Dan Calloway, who has this whole Aboriginal movement going on, saying we didn't even come from Africa. You know what I'm saying? Where are all the slave ships? Like they're at the bottom of the sea.
Yeah. I'm say that name again so I can, because I'm about to look this up.
Dane Calloway. Now
Dane Calloway.
Dane Calloway is what I would consider like an internet social media scholar.
Okay.
And I have no problem with Dane Calloway or his followers, the Aboriginal movement. I'm just saying you have to have a wide variety of resources and sources for your information. Just don't go from one thing. Yes, some of us came here on slave ships. Some of us were already here. You ask where the slave ships are, they're in the bottom of the ocean, like the Titanic. Go find them. They were also destroyed because slavery was prohibited and people wanted to destroy the evidence, because the penalty for continue to profit and conduct yourself in the slave business could be death or life imprisonment. So they were destroying them, or they were just using the wood for other things.
Right.
They were recycling the wood. So that's where the slave ships are. But there's just too many correlations of what we do. Even if we're just talking about the Geechee Gullah and the Sea Islands in South Carolina, it's obvious that we came from Africa.
That's true.
A lot of us, but a lot of us were already here too.
Yeah.
So I'm just not really buying this. According to my, don't even argue with me. You don't even have to argue with me. Just argue with the scholars. Argue with John Henrik Clark, like your mom, like you said.
Right.
Argue with him. Argue with him. He wrote books.
Another thing, it's funny that I was just about to mention that. My mother always mentions that too, is that nowadays they just spit out this stuff as if it's fact with no reference. Whereas a lot of these books where we were reading literally had references. They would cite where this information came from and where you could find it. You could not dispute this. And it wasn't one scholar, this was multiple scholars. And in some cases, it blew people's minds to hear white scholars co-sign it and be like, facts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's I was going to mention that. So that's why I do see talk in this environment.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? With all these books. I have over 1,000 books here. And like you said, in the back of the book, it has these references. Now, I'm going to be objective. Mm-hmm. Some of the books do reference other people who have the same agenda to make the same point.
I get that.
But that's why you got to keep checking the references for all the different kinds of books.
Right.
And then you'll say like, oh, a lot of white people are saying the same thing too.
Real talk.
Who don't have a vested interest in, in us, like, in this particular agenda. So that's that. Here's another thing. When you search when you're doing your searches and trying to figure out stuff, stop just using Google.
Yeah, Google's not
There's
it.
there is an algorithm depending on where you live that will determine what kind of information Google will give you. That's a fact.
That's
Use
true.
other search engines. I don't have all the search engines off the top of my head, but I have these books, so I usually do use Google. But that's because I have all these resources behind me. But I have tried to research stuff from these books that I won't find on Google, but I have found it years ago. So it tells me that Google has made some modifications and adjustments over the years to give you access to certain information.
They're changing history and information in real time.
Yes.
And this is where we got to be careful.
Yeah, probably 50 years, Martin Luther King will be probably mulatto.
Probably. You're probably right. And guess what? This new generation will be none the wiser.
They're gonna have. Oh man, oh man, it's they're gonna have. Oh man, I can't even.
Bro, put it like I've seen YouTube videos.
They're gonna have Seth Rogen playing Martin Luther King, man, in the movie.
Right. Have you ever seen them hip hop reaction videos where the new generation who's listened to say like Tupac or somebody for the first time? It blows my mind that they've never.
Oh no, I've never seen that.
Bro, it's almost laughable. It's like, man, where y'all been at? But then I realized that's our fault too, because the parents aren't really educating themselves. The parents probably aren't educated. One, I hate to say that, but they're not passing down a lot of this information to the kids.
Well, I wouldn't give them a hard time though.
I don't give them a hard time. I mean, hip hop is so low. I mean, hip hop is just an example, but that can translate to, Black history or anything. I guess what I'm trying to get at is that there's just a level of exposure here that they're not getting when it comes to accessible information. Like it's
you gotta hear something for the first time at some point.
I get it.
Well, real quick before we transition, because I've never seen them before. Now you got me.
They're hilarious. You got to go online. They're hilarious.
What do they do when they first hear Tupac?
Bro, they realize that what they've been consuming is not it.
Oh, really?
No, it blows my mind. It's like in that very moment, they are now set on this path of exploration to go back in time and listen to what we were listening to. People get mad at let me put it like this before I go into that. Recently we were in the car, me and my lady, and we were listening to music, and they're now sampling music from the 90s and 2000s.
Yeah.
Right. And I said, well, that only makes sense because we sampled. Yeah. But if it wasn't for the sample, it would not prompt me to go back and know who Earth, Wind, and Fire was, who Bobby McFerrin was. Where did that drum loop come to? That sent me down a path to digging through these records and familiarizing myself with music that was generations before me. So now we got music that I'm listening to from the 60s, 70s. I'm an 80s baby. And my lady laughed because there's music from my generation that I don't know about, but I'm more familiar with music from the 60s and 70s because that's what influenced hip hop. I'm a hip hop baby. I was raised in the 80s, but some of this music came out when I was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, and I wasn't tapped in. So now I'm really going back and refamiliarizing myself with music that came out when I was born, during those early years. I ain't getting into hip hop till like maybe 92, 93.
Oh, okay.
I was old school, bro. I was old school. My mom she was bumping everything. She was bumping a lot of African music too, like Yusuf Ndur, Baba Mal. I had the best of both worlds, man. So this is only natural.
You came into that's a good transition. You came into the state of hip hop at a very good time because I felt like hip hop was really reaching its point, its prime in the 90s. A lot of people will say that the 90s is the golden age. I like to say that hip hop in the 90s is kind of like basketball in 90s. You know what I'm saying? In the 50s,
Mm,
60s, you had the cats doing the granny shots in basketball. You had Wilt Chambers scoring, you know what I'm saying,
right.
127 points in a game, 55 rebounds in the first half. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
It's
bro,
different.
you're playing against scrubs. You're playing against middle schoolers. Those asterisks, that's a different argument. But by the time we got to the 80s and Jordan was there and the Patrick Ewing and the Dominique Wilkins and things of that nature, it started to ramp up. And then the 90s came, and then it was Kobe
Right.
back, and it was all these. Then it was Tim Hardaway with his crossover, and we were like, "What is this?"
It was the
Oh,
finesse players, man. They
yeah,
added it. The swag came in, but that was all hip hop.
yes,
I remember where they went from. The moment they went from tight shorts to baggy ones, because Iverson made that shit cool.
yes, and then the tattoos and all that.
Right. Cornrows,
But I'm
Spreewell,
like,
all
if
them.
you played basketball in the 90s, you can play in any era.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I feel until it
Right.
changes.
That's real.
Until it changes. You know what I'm saying? Because the best of the best came out of the 90s. I feel the same way about hip hop. That's why I'm so proud of people like Redman,
Mm-hmm.
Jay-Z, Nas, people who
All
are
the old heads who are still like, yo, we
50s.
got it.
They're in their 50s and they're like, what? They're making just as good, if not better music. Their rhyme schemes are on point. Like,
But they understand that they gotta keep their sound updated, and the language has to stay current because every generation has their own language, and
right.
that's why Nas. What do you say on that album? I'm trying to make music for the 16-year-olds and the 60-year-olds, so he understands.
Right.
Like you can't be coming at 88. Some of these old rappers be showing their age. They still really dress like they in 88, bro. Like, and you wonder why this new generation ain't listening to you because you ain't updated your sound, your style. There's nothing that they can relate to there. But then you mad that they don't give you this level of respect or that you're not mentioned.
Yeah.
When it comes to hip hop.
It's funny that you said that, and this is a good transition because I want to just talk about the state of hip hop right now, and then we'll leave the last topic of who created hip hop, who deserves the credit for the last part. But I was watching the Art of Dialogue. Shout out to the Art of Dialogue. There's a brother who does this podcast, and he has some good artists on there. I love the story. He had an episode with Melly Mel that came out in early 2023. And Melly Mel was on there with his gold chains and
Right. Looking 88. Let's just keep it a buck.
I love Melly Mel, man, because he was the first one to really do the conscious rap.
Right.
And then like people just took his style and they just built on it and they got better. But he really hasn't come to terms with it yet.
Right.
So it's like it's literally stand-up comedy to say, man, I'll battle anybody. Eminem, this, that, and third, this, that, and third. I'm like, and he was saying stuff like, well, you really can't say that Lil Wayne, you know what I'm saying, is really a good rapper because he's not even using his own voice. He's using auto-tune. I'm like, bruh, I would just.
What about Zach Roger?
And I'm just like, bro, exactly.
Stop it.
It's Peter Frampton. But listen, it's like, I'm just like, bro, I would love for you to entertain me by I would pay for it. I would literally pay for him to see him battle Eminem or Lil Wayne. And I couldn't help but be petty. It's the Pisces in me. I was like, see, that's why you got knocked out by Willie D back in the day.
You did not say that. Well, not, of course, he didn't hear you. But had somebody said that conversation would have went left real quick.
I was like, I said to myself, see, that's the reason why you got knocked out by Willie D, because you still got a big head. Even back in the day, he was talking about, hey, I'll fight Willie D. Willie D was like, man, you do not want this smoke. And he,
Right.
yeah.
Ooh.
But what do you when I say let's talk about the state of hip hop? Because people be like, man, hip hop is whack these days, it's corny, it's watered down, the mainstream ain't this, that, and the third. Before I give my point of view, when I say let's talk about the state of hip hop, what are your first thoughts right now about the state of hip hop?
My first thoughts, everything is hip hop. That's first and foremost. Two, it's long and appropriated. So when people say hip hop is dead, they're looking at it from a commercial industry corporate POV, right? They prop up and promote what they want you to see, right? I also caution people, like, the one thing I do hate about this hip hop is that the machine has taken over and the algorithm only pumps out the negative. But even this young generation, I'm a teaching artist, bro. And when I step into these environments in the public school system, into the residency, Teen Life Center, working with Healthy You Can, like all these organizations that I work with, you have a conversation with these young kids, and they'll tell you that this is whack. They are hungry to get introduced to something new, right? Something different. Half of them aren't listening to these mainstream artists like that. Another thing is, I think that we failed these kids because go and invite one of them to the studio and see how their attitude change. Go get one of these kids and say, yo, y'all come to the lab with me and really work with them in the studio. And they will stop creating the bullshit that they're creating. Like, you show them like some dope beats, different rhyme schemes, their life will change. They will not make music the same. Show them how to tell a story, their story. Teach them how to really unpack that and not be afraid to put that in the music. Because a lot of this music is the same three topics that we always talk about. It's just said different and in clever ways.
Sex, money, and drugs.
Right.
And violence.
It's the same thing. And most times you get an artist who's giving you 2 verses or 3 verses of the same content, just said differently. Dog, you just said what you said down here, you said up top. I cut this off after the first 16. I know where we're going. Most times I'm there for the hook anyway. I'm not even there for. I'm there
so
for the
hook. You're a hook focused guy.
I say that because we have to caution ourselves when listening to this music, man. Like, a lot of us co-sign this music in ways that we don't know, because they'll give you a dope beat and your head's already nodding in an agreement before they've said anything. So they can come with a fuck my baby mama, yada yada, and you still going like this because that beat is hitting. That hook come, it's so dumbed down and repetitive, but it's catchy because we're swag. We're people who are we're swag. We love like dope beats, rhymes, melodies, catchiness, cadences. Like, we just naturally gravitate to all that. So even I find myself listening to a lot of this crap music, and sometimes I get so caught up in the loop that if I still myself long enough, I realize how stupid it sounds. All right. So a lot of times I'm telling folks, like, I don't, we co-sign a lot of stuff that we don't know we're co-signing.
Yeah. It's interesting that you said that you into the hook. I think that's the first time I've ever heard. Well, it's not the first time I've heard that. Because if I'm listening to a song, I ain't waiting for the hook. Because if you don't get
I'm a patient guy when it comes to music.
Yeah.
I listen to a lot of stuff.
I'm gonna be honest with you. If you don't get me within the first 10 seconds, I'm gone.
Yeah.
That's why for a lot of people whose beats aren't all that tight, if in the first 10 seconds the beat don't grab me, I'm out. That's why a lot of cats who got really good lyrics, they probably should just go a cappella for the first 5 seconds and then bring the whack ass in.
Right.
You got a whack ass beat with some tight lyrics. Just say that, man, just a bass line and just rap, because I love lyrics. That's my focus, is the lyrics. But I need the beat to grab me first, and then I'll listen to you. Like, for instance, I was listening to that new Young Thug. Someone said, "Hey man, that new Young Thug is hot." I'm like, okay, let me give it. And some of it was fire. You know what I'm saying? But if he didn't grab me with that beat, man, the beat selection got to be on point. It's all about vibration with me.
Bro, we had this kind of talked about this briefly, because we talked about this Killer Mike album. And you said there was a question you posed to me in a text message of who I thought the dopest feature was. And when I said Killer Mike, you kind of cut me off because you were like, I don't want to hear Andre 3000. Nah, not at all.
I thought you were gonna say Andre 3000.
I love Andre 3000.
Yeah,
but I wasn't impressed by that verse.
Yeah, I wasn't impressed.
I've heard hotter verses. I think the fact that there's something to be said about access and exclusivity. Andre 3000 has a brand now to where he's kind of like Jay Electronica. Like Jay Electronica is both dope and a disappointment in a sense.
Yeah, they got the same baby mama, so I guess it makes sense.
Oh, well, there you go. You're wrong for that. Stop it. I just went to that concert. That was a dope concert, bro.
Okay.
But I say that to say, like, there's something to be said about artists who make their appearance so scarce that when they drop, everything is dope. Everything then becomes dope. Because it's rare that we hear this guy.
This cat is thirsty, man.
But what did I say to you? I listened to this, and the one artist that caught me is the one artist I don't even listen to, and that was Future. That hook, that melody, what he said. If Future switched it up, bro, he would be unstoppable. Because the way that was crafted, and he may not have wrote that. Killer or some writers in the back might have just gave him the lyrics. I see this all the time, and said, "Sing that how you sing it."
Yeah.
But beyond everything else, I tend to extract and unpack lyrics differently. So the messaging for me is what got me, and to hear it come from Future, who's super heavy with the auto tune, and then have this like dope melody and this dope messaging. It got me. It made me want to go back and revisit and listen to some Future. I've never bumped a Future album ever. That's what's happening.
You know what hip hop is, the state of hip hop has actually, taught me. It's taught me to be open-minded to different demographics and stuff like that, and respecting it. I'm not really impressed or into Future. I really don't be feeling
it. That's the thing.
I do love that. I do appreciate. I do like that album Hendrix, and he'll have some good cuts. He's hit or miss with me.
Right.
He's hit, miss, or average to me. But here's the deal, though. You go down south, particularly in Atlanta. That man is the man.
Everybody says that.
Man, he is the man, bro. Like, he's bigger than Jay-Z.
But people got mad when this young boy got online and said that Future was more influential than Jay-Z was.
He is.
He was doper than Jay-Z.
I don't know if he's doper, but he is. I mean,
there's levels of dopeness.
But I just some people
levels of dope.
There's different kinds of dope. Some people are on meth, some people are on meth, some people are on crack, some are on that fentanyl.
Right.
I don't know. But listen, I'm not gonna disrespect the South, man. The South got a good ear. People forget that all Black American music comes out of the South.
And we have to understand something to say. The South, what people don't want to acknowledge is that the South has always had its own language and culture outside of hip hop. And the South has influenced hip hop more than people want to give credit. We always go to the East Coast or, West Coast did that thing. Nah, the South heavily influenced hip hop in ways that people do not want to talk about.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is, it's that country twang. It's the way they talk. It's the way they're not as articulate as we are up north. So equate that with them being unintelligent or uneducated, which we all know some of the most brilliant minds came from the South, bro. Let's keep it a buck.
From segregated schools.
Right.
George Washington Carver.
Don't be no fool.
George Washington Carver came out of segregated schools and was, hired by the government because of his genius and because he was able to make so many inventions out of the dang peanut. But that's just the tip of the iceberg of what George Washington Carver came. Right. But that's just to fortify your point that the South, like Andre 3, another throwback, another callback, like Andre 3000 said infamously, the South got something to say.
Right, on the award show.
It's the foundation of Black music. It is the most influential aspect of hip-hop music. I will argue that because our music came out of the South, out of the churches, out of folk music, you know what I'm saying, out of Negro spirituals. You know what I'm saying? So my point is, to understand the state of hip-hop, we need more people like you, and we're gonna have a different episode when we talk about more about what you do in the classroom and teaching young people, because once people know that, it gives a different vantage point and a different perspective of what to look for and listen for. You start seeing with your ears.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, Yirim taught me this, Logic taught me this. Now I hear this different. I hear this totally different. I listen to the Ghetto Boys differently once I understood the culture. You know what I'm saying? Then I really was like, man,
Bro, it's funny you said that. Recently, I was on Reddit and somebody brought up, there was this whole thread on Project Pat, right? And I was like, it got real interesting because people were kind of breaking down why they were so dope. 3-6 Mafia now. I immediately went and bumped some of that. Bro, there was so much, and I always tell people, less is more in a lot of cases. Them beats are so stripped down. That language is, you listen to Chicken Head's dope. Bro. You watch the video and there's this interaction between the girl and the dude, and they're just kind of having, and the way it was wrote with the back and forth. I'm listening to this, I'm listening to the beat, I'm listening to what they were saying. It's super relatable. And I tell people, what makes Drake the dopest artist of our generation, and you can argue me all you want about how dope he is or not, his content is super relatable.
Yeah.
Super relatable. And the way he paints the picture, you can visualize it and put yourself in there.
Yeah, but his dad's from the South, so
there we go. Stop playing with me.
And he's always talking about his dad being, I think, from Memphis.
Come on.
Like that, yeah. I think his dad's from Memphis. He always talks about his dad, you know what I'm saying? But when we talk about this, is a great transition. You know what I'm saying? Let's pivot. Okay. So who created hip-hop? We just now talked about the South. You know what I'm saying? How much credit do we give to Black Americans in the African diaspora?
I would give.
Wait, hold on. Let me give an introduction real quick. Okay. Why I want to talk about this. Busta Rhymes caught a lot of flack. I think Fat Joe caught some flack too, because Fat Joe and basically Busta Rhymes are saying basically the same thing. Busta Rhymes is speaking from the fact that his family and his ancestry is from the Caribbean. I think he might be Jamaican. And so he was like, man, hip hop was created by basically, a person from the Caribbean. And, Fat Joe has said, was created by Latinos and Blacks. A lot of Black people, you know what I'm saying, who are on that foundational Black American thing and that ADOS, American descendants of slavery, was like, nah, man, that's all Black people. Black people created all of hip hop. I'm like,
I feel some type of way about this.
That's the King James version of actually what happened. Like, what's your take on that? On like who created hip hop and how much credit do we give Black Americans, and the African?
Yeah, people gonna hate me for this one. So this is the thing. Everything came from Africa. I don't give a fuck. We are the ones. There would be no modern music if it wasn't for Africans and their contributions. Let's get that out the way. And we talked about this, Logic. This is how these powers are able to appropriate and take our culture. I am in agreement with both of these parties. I would say yes, Africans created hip hop. That was, all the rhythms, the percussions. We listen with a third ear, so we're able to see these little pockets and rhythms that Europeans can't pick up on, bro. I hate to say it, bro, but we hear differently, right? And that's partly because of these unsyncopated rhythms, that come through the drum. The drum is the foundation of everything. I don't care what you tell me, bro. Two, I will say, yes, blacks created hip hop because we defined it. We put a definition to that. We took that, we added to it, we made it something ours. It came out of black struggle, and we defined it as hip hop. But as a result, the Europeans let us do that work. Now that you have defined it, they were able to take that and market it. And I tell people, once we're the innovators of everything. They sit and watch. Once we define that, we did the work for them. They don't need us no more. They took that and ran with it. But yes, I will say, blacks created hip hop. That shit came from Africans.
Yeah.
Cut and dry.
Yeah, I think that we need to create that nuance, and that's where you and I come as educators and artist activists, and that's what's so powerful about what we do as artist activists or activated artists, is because we can actually teach through a song. We can actually lure people in with a dope ass beat, with some lyrics and a dope hook, and have you nodding. As soon as you do this, what are you automatically doing subconsciously? You're agreeing with what I said.
What I said, like I said, you already in agreement.
So when I get on a track and say, let me break this down for you, and I rhyme the words and I make it sound so nice, and basically when I'm rapping it, and you're nodding your head, but you're nodding your head to when I say black people created the term hip hop. That's different than creating what it actually, all the components of it. We did not create all the components of it. We created a name to represent the colonization of everything. I know I said that word wrong, but we put a name.
I've said several words wrong here.
Yeah, but there's no way in the world that you can claim that we created the rapper. There's no way in the world Black Americans say we created the rapper when we have the griot.
Right.
The griot came out of Africa. It's a storyteller. We can't say that we created breakdancing when breakdancing was literally a martial art called capoeira out of Brazil that was transplanted there from Angola, one of many places, but we put it in the form of a dance because we wanted to hide it from the colonizer because they would kill us if we performed a martial arts open.
Speed that up. Speed that up.
Speed it up. We cannot claim graffiti because there's hieroglyphics on the side of pyramids. How in the world? But we can claim the colonization of it. It coming together, it's synthesis, and we gave it a name. We gave it swag. We gave it slang, and we gave it an enterprise. We gave it we made it so it could be packaged.
Right. And this is what I'm always telling folks, that there's levels to this thing. Like, we can't be making these broad statements as if it's just factual. Let's unpack this for a minute.
Yeah, and it really serves us no good. But if we really look at it, it really serves us no good to say that we created hip hop, everything about it. The reason why is we're stronger as a diaspora than we are as a single entity just here in America. How do you think, white folks, took over stuff? They didn't take over it just by saying, well, us Italians, we created everything. You know what I'm saying? Us British created everything. Us French, no. They got all the diaspora of the European diaspora together and said, this is how we're going to split up Africa.
Pretty much. That's what they did.
So
and hey, bro, people celebrate like the World Cup. I tell people soccer is the coldest ass sport ever. This is how white supremacy is propped up and maintained, is through these sporting events. I'd be like, y'all got to start looking at this differently. This is not just a sport. I bring up soccer because this is the biggest sport in the world. But the ones who are on top, the teams and the clubs that are on top, are all European. But if you look at them, all their top players are taken out of Africa, South America. Goddamn, they continents of color, bro. They went and got and extracted the best of us to play for them.
The same thing with
in order
basketball,
to maintain and prop up white supremacy, bro.
But the same thing with basketball, bro. The United States team, the U.S. team is nothing but a whole bunch of black folks winning the gold medal for America.
Like, y'all celebrating this shit like as if it's that 240 mil that they giving these players, these 100 mil. That's cool. Kudos. I love it. You know why? Because we don't know what they're doing behind the scenes with that money. But trust and believe, man, there's a bag that they getting 5, 6, 7, 8 times what they're paying out to these folks to ensure that they stay on top.
Right.
And then there's this contract. You can't talk that conscious shit, bro. Well, you're on contract. There's certain things you just can't do.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much intersection. Like, I mean, it's basically interchangeable. Whether you talking about hip hop, whether you talking about sports, it doesn't matter. It's the same filter and the same engine that they put us through. They're going to use us, you know what I'm saying, to protect their interest, you know what I'm saying, and maintain their dominance.
Right.
But they need us to do it.
They do.
Yep. So one of the things we do, I mean, we can keep going. We can have a part 2 on this, but one of the things we do on C Talk, we here with Yirim Seck, you know what I'm saying, artist, activist, educator, teacher. You know, he wears many hats, father, son, all that. One of the things we do on C Talk after we have this conversation, we talk about what is the plan of action. So based on what we've talked about today, what is the plan of action? And also if you can give, you know what I'm saying, the public, you know, some homework to do, you know what I'm saying, and whatnot. So based on what we talked about, what do you think the plan of action is, man?
I would say this starts with the babies, man. We got to start educating these kids. Because one thing we fell off at, and I don't know where it stopped with one generation, is that you look at every other culture and it's pretty much plug and play. Like, they raise their kids to step in where they stepped off at. And I always tell people, like, China is winning. They're becoming a world dominant power because they have a 5,000-year plan. They write their history in advance, and they live it out as they go. They raise their kids in a way to where they're still with the same values and beliefs. So when I die, they ready. They're in position, bro. It's plug and play. Somebody, and I see this with a lot of, like, people don't know this about me, and I don't tell it, but I deal with a lot of money. And when I say that, is that my circle, there's like millions in my circle, right? And the one thing I noticed is that what they do about their kids is it's all about financial literacy. It's all about entrepreneurism and the understanding that you're going to be driving this machine when I'm done. And they raise them accordingly. And I think we got to apply those same thoughts and methods when it comes to hip hop and our culture. Because it's all hip. People say hip hop and they think it's just music. Nah, bro. You see what Virgil Abloh did with, you know, the whole brand before he died. I mean, we literally have created a culture that is all hip hop. Point. That's hip hop. Tell me it ain't. I don't care what it is. Fashion, music, sports, even education. Because now they're studying hip hop in university. They got Lupe teaching a class at Harvard.
Yeah,
they got that.
They've been and had college courses, you know what I'm saying, on Tupac for years.
Right. They got now Kendrick's winning the Pulitzers for storytelling. Everything's hip hop. We've made it so easy for these folks to get paid. And that's why we have to keep innovating. We have to stay ahead of the curve. But we also have to get to a point where we stop giving them this shit and maintain control over this.
Yeah, that's another episode because I want to because I want to talk about, you know, I mean, who we allowing in our microcosms, you know what I'm saying, in our micro universes, in our micro communities. Who are we allowing to really participate in this? You know what I'm saying? That's where that's where that conversation, you know, what role do the Macklemores and the Eminems and things like that, and the what's his name?
G-Eazy.
I mean, like they're I mean, like we can speak on Malcolm more because we know Ben. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
He's a positive dude. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So
I
feel like we're very responsible when it comes to him. We've taught him well, and he's a very responsible artist. Some people might disagree, but that's for a different story. But in a different episode. But I think the plan of action is to add on to what you said is to educate on the history of hip hop and how this is a movement and a tool to really address generational trauma and how it can help us be better people. The art of storytelling is the way that you heal. Like I could tell, I could have some kind of feelings about Yirim. You can have some kind of feelings about me that aren't good. But as soon as you sit down and hear my story, it increases the likelihood to be like, okay, man.
Right. I actually like
that.
this guy.
I understand why Logic acts and says the way the things he does, because we have a story that intersects and, you know, we have something in common. So
I don't, this is the thing. I don't get mad at black people for not liking white people as I do for white people, not black people, right? And let me break this down.
Okay.
I always ask myself, like, what did we do to deserve slavery? Like, we had all this fucked up shit, and psychologically, it's still happening. Like, we're still suffering the trauma of that. And then through media, visuals, what they choose, the people they choose to use as a prop to kind of make sure that white supremacy is reinforced to stay strong through the music and everything else, right? There's all that. But I'm always telling folks, like, you got to understand, there's a experience that black people have had dealing with white folks that are pretty general. Like, we're all in agreement that this shit is real. It's happening. You can't be mad at us for having this shared experience, knowing it to be fact, right? And it continues to happen, right? So I kind of tell people, like, my daughter, perfect example, she was one of 6 black kids in this whole entire private school. She's only been to 2 private schools in her life, and I won't mention the name. But there was one girl in particular who she always had an issue with, right? And so I always said, this is where this is where it starts at, is at her experience dealing with white people, and is starting early. One, we have these white people who are like, I don't see color. Fuck, my daughter see color, because every bad thing that's happening to her is coming from a white person. or a white kid. And that's partly due to her environment. It's kind of a numbers game. Her being one of six, the chances that her being attacked or belittled or constantly reminded that she's not shit or doesn't have a place increases because she's in an environment that doesn't have many of her and she doesn't see a reflecting of her face. So this is where the generalizations and the stereotypes begin at an early age because her experience dealing with a certain group has been the same all across the board her whole. So she's gonna grow up, start believing that every white person is the same because that's been her experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I always tell people, it ain't our responsibility to change racism. White folks got to do that. Y'all got to do that work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's our, and getting back to the to add on to what you said, it's our responsibility to heal ourselves, though. You know what I'm saying?
It is.
That's what hip hop does. It gives us but we need to have a lot more ownership of it, and we can do it first on the micro level first, and then it can spread out. So your homework, I would say, for people out there listening to this, is share some playlists of artists that are not a part of the mainstream, that are that they say something impressive, that say something different, that say something unique. Get about 5 artists, you know what I'm saying, in their albums, put together a playlist and get with someone and then sit down and say, man, what you got? Man, I got me some YBN Corday. Check out this album.
And he's filthy, by the way.
Yeah, he's dope. You know what I'm saying? I got some Clear Soul Forces out of Detroit. They're a dope group out of Detroit. You know what I'm saying? So it's like there's so many, groups out there. I got some Immortal Technique. You ever heard of him? He's dope. Let me this album that he came out with years ago. Just, it's dope. It's filthy. You know what I'm saying? So that's the homework that I have, man. It's just like, listen to, music that is new to you. You got to understand, if something came out in 88 and you ain't heard it, it's new music.
Right.
It's
new to me.
It's new to you. I mean, it blew my mind the first time I heard The Last Poets. And I was like 3 decades behind.
Hey, but that just goes back to that earlier question of who created hip hop, because it was all drums.
Right. And I met those brothers. I interviewed them. Do you know they changed Obio Dune? Anyway, the whole point is a lot of the members, if not all of the members, have African names.
There you go. Pan-Africanism. Bro, it's all hip hop.
And a lot of people credit The Last Poets as being the forefathers of modern day hip hop.
I can't deny or confirm that. I mean,
no, I'm just saying. That's one way to look at it.
Bobby McFerrin was rapping.
Yep, Gil Scott Heron was rapping.
It was rapping.
Yeah,
we had this conversation about mumble rap. Every generation has it. It was scatting.
Oh, yeah. We got to talk about that. Yeah, we got to talk.
Okay, there's so much we could talk about here. But this whole mumble rap thing is that's nothing new.
Let's end it like this, man. Okay. Tell them where they can find your music, how they can get in contact with you. One more again. I'll put your Cash App if you want me to, or your Venmo inside the comments when this comes out. But tell them where they can get your music, how they can support you, and where you at.
Man, so you can support me directly by running up them numbers, man. It don't mean nothing, but people like numbers, whatever. But that lets me know that my music's being heard. Run up them numbers. I'm all across all the streaming platforms as Yirim Seck. You want to shoot me some ducats? A little bit of change, that's cool too. Not necessary. I'd rather you spend $2 with me on Bandcamp versus you sending me anything. Just go and throw your boy $5 on the album. Yep. And I got good music on, and that's the best way you could directly support me, is by spending with me on Bandcamp. Go to SoundCloud, run up them numbers. If you got a streaming platform of your choice, man, my monthly listener count needs to go up. What's up? I'm at a whopping 144. Boy, there's 144 for the listeners out there monthly who rock with your boy. Hopefully you can be 145. Come on.
No, but in all seriousness, man, you're not giving yourself any justice, man. Yirim really does make good music, and
Thank you.
he has good visuals too. He's out there. Just search his name. His music videos is hot.
Thank you.
Even had a movement where he had the 206 shirts that were red, black.
I'm coming out for those. I just put another order in, and I got you. And
okay.
Yes, thank you
Yes.
for all of that. I got new music on the way. I just dropped the joint called "It All Falls Down." Run those numbers up, and I got more stuff to come, man.
Yeah, look, man, look. Here's the deal, man. Seed Talk. Not saying that I'm never going to put someone on this platform who doesn't make good music and impressive music, but Yirim's not one of them. I'm always going to refer you to good people or good people who make good music. You're going to get one or the two. You know what I'm saying? And he's one of those people, man. And this is the last thing I want to say, man, because this is heavy on my heart, man. I'm going to end with this, man. There's a lot of movements out there to be like, Africans don't like us. They be yeah, there's a lot of black folks that don't like Africans either. But my question to you is, who is these Africans you hanging around with?
Right.
Who are they hanging around with? Because there's sellout Africans. Maybe you should stop hanging around those sellout Africans, because the Africans that are part of the diaspora that we rock with, that, support black nationalism, they don't dislike black folks. When I went to Ghana and I got off that plane, I was rocking with Ghanaians who rock with black folks. You know what I'm saying? So my question is who is these Africans you hanging around with? Maybe you need to get into a different circle and then inbox me, because I can definitely initiate you into a circle of Africanisms, black people all over the world who support the freedom, liberation, and reparations for black folks in America.
Don't believe the narrative. That's what I'm saying. Don't believe the narrative. And in closing, since this is music and we're talking about healing and trauma and telling our story, the greatest praise that I've ever heard is from Gabriel Teodros, and he ends every post with, "Music is medicine."
Yeah. Check out Gabriel Teodros too.
He's out filthy there too. That's shameless plug. My God,
another brother of the diaspora too. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Ethiopian ancestry. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Another brother, a black man. I consider him a black man.
Good guy.
I don't know who. Man, I'm telling you, man. There's a whole man. Let me introduce you to.
Look, we gonna keep going. We keep saying we logging off. We logging off.
All right. We out.